Hello and welcome. Sorry for the delay, but we are back. We're bad. We're better than ever. This is the DC Comics News Weekly Podcast, episode 194, here to discuss everything DC in movies, TV and streaming, comic books, the greatest things ever created, and a little bit of other news as well that ties in. With me today, as always, is my brother from another mother, the man from the East Coast with the most, Mr. Brad Vilicki.
Hey, Steve. Been too long.
Way too long. But now that our servers are up again, hopefully back to the weekly recording and distributing of great news. But have you been? Everything great with you?
Yeah, it's been good. Been busy, but been good.
Fantastic. And obviously we're now in 2024 and the countdown to New York Comic Con has begun.
Yep. Press pass application should open pretty soon, so
fantastic.
It's always the best weekend of the year. So
let's see what happens. And fingers crossed, will you be heading to SDCC again this year too?
This year I cannot because it takes place the same weekend as a family wedding.
Well, no, family comes first.
So yeah,
just ask Batman.
Yep. So this year, unfortunately, won't make it to San Diego.
No worries. Well, the home con for me is probably my favourite anyway, the NYC con. So let's look forward to that one. So let's begin. We're back with episode 194, and let's start with the movie news. And obviously, since we've been away, a fair few stories have come up. So there's a mix of stuff from a couple of weeks ago and brand new news as well. Starting with, of course, the full-length trailer for Joker Folie, Deux, the sequel to Joaquin Phoenix's original Joker, has dropped. And very thought-provoking, wasn't it?
Yes. I love trailers, but this particular trailer I've watched more than any other trailer for a long time, maybe since The Social Network. There's just something about it that I just come back to again. I think I was a little skeptical on Lady Gaga playing Harley Quinn, but after this trailer, I'm all on board. I love the scenes with her. When she's painting her face, when they have that little kind of like going down the stairs dance again, that mimics the first one. That was great. That little scene where she puts the gun to her head, harking back to the first movie. There's just something about it. I like the use of the What the World Needs Now. I think it was the Tom Jones version that they use in this. I'm all on board for this and excited. Obviously, they didn't highlight, and they do this on a lot of trailers for musicals. They didn't highlight the music so much, but they did have that line about music is what brings us together and fix the broken parts, or something similar to that. But yeah, I love this trailer. There's something about it that just draws me back in. I can't wait to see. It makes me wonder too what the story is about. Is it all in his head? It's really even though it gives us a hint, it leaves more questions than answers. So yeah, I'm super excited. What about you?
You touched on so many things that were revolving around my brain as well, but I need to add, not just is it all in his, is it all in hers?
Yep. Because
I sense a bit of both. And the music, as we've been discussing for months and months and months, seems to be part of their either own personal delusion or the shared delusion they both share. I'm a lot calmer about the fact that it's a musical now, because what I didn't want is for Joker and Harley to break into song every 15 minutes, because that would have driven me absolutely insane. Because as you know, I hate musicals, full stop. I can't stand them. But this seems more like that the music's going to be a vehicle to tell the story. And in many ways it was in the first Joker film. So I'm a lot happier about that side of things. Yeah, What the World Needs Now by Burt Bacharach, the Tom Jones version is, well, fellow Brit, love him, legend. I hope he lives forever. But I want to touch on a couple of things from the trailer that make me think it might be both of them having a delusion, or Harley's trapping him. Because obviously in the comics, she was his psychiatrist. She's a trained professional. She was there to get a scoop and make her name. So is she fooling him? Is she pretending she's another Arkham inmate to get the story, or have they changed it for dramatic purposes? Either way, I want to find out now, because I was a little bit concerned. Oh, do I even want to see this on the big screen? Shall I wait? But this trailer's answered so many questions, but it's raised even more, and that's what a good trailer should do. It should whet your appetite, but still leave you wanting more. So I was very happy about that.
And it's interesting because I didn't really. To me, it seems that she was a patient. I didn't even think of maybe she's tricking him. I did think that maybe it's in her head too. I did get that, but I didn't think of her as possibly being the psychiatrist. I thought that was just something that they changed. So, yeah,
she wants to be like him, so her delusion is that she's an inmate like he is.
Yeah, that could be. Yes.
Either way, fascinating.
Now it just makes me all that more excited.
Yeah, it's really set cogs and wheels turning in my head, which that's a sign of a great trailer. That's a sign of a really good trailer.
I'm with you on the musical things. I'm not a huge musical fan in general, but with Joker, it never really worried me because I think that there was cool ways that they can integrate the music into it without it seeming like a musical, like you say, busting into song. I don't think it's going to be like that. It kind of reminds me a bit of Dancer in the Dark, if you've ever seen it, where they integrated music very. It was this Lars von Trier with Bjork, and she loves musicals, and she fantasizes on this terrible job about being in a musical. And the way they integrated the music within that was great, and I think this is going to be
similar. Have to see that because I love her.
Yeah.
I love Bjork.
It's definitely worth checking out. Yeah.
Very cool. So both of our worries have been calmed a bit, and we're both excited. So, good job. Good job. Now, this one I think is a great story because I think he's a fantastic actor, and he has played Batman on audio in the scripted podcast. Winston Duke, who is the leader of the Ape Tribe in the 2 Black Panther movies, says he wants to be Batman, but in live action. Great story, and his passion for the character is palpable. It's real. So what do you make of this one?
Yeah, I'd say why not? We've had the comic, still going on, with the next Batman in New York. There's so many things you could do because there's already been such great source material. And quite frankly, it's just, I'd like to see it happen just to make the right people angry, just to so that they can pop their heads out and who they are. So I'd be all for it. Yeah, and
they already have.
Yeah. So why not? I agree with you. He's a great actor. I loved him in the Black Panther movies. So yeah, I say why not? I'd watch it for sure.
Well, he's already done it, and he did it brilliantly. He was a fantastic Batman. I mean, his voice grated on me a little because it was even more growly than Christian Bale's voice in the Nolan trilogy, which is one thing I hated about those films. But in terms of a cool, calm, collected, charismatic Bruce Wayne, in terms of vulnerability, in terms of passion, in terms of projecting anger in all the right ways, we've seen him do it in all his live action films. The guy can act. Now, as you said, there's that very vocal minority who will come in and say, wrong race for Bruce Wayne, this, that, and the other. But obviously these people, again, like you say, have never read a comic book and don't realise there are 2 Batmen, one in New York, one of whom is Lucius Fox's son, Tim, a.k.a. Jace. Now, I can think of nothing better than having 2 awesome Batmen on screen together with a joint threat from New York and Gotham, and they have to unite and team up. So like you, I'd love to see it.
And that's kind of a cool thing too, because in a DC movie, and you might be able to correct me if I am wrong, but there's never been a New York. It's always been Gotham, Metropolis, Star City.
In the golden age, for the first few issues of Detective Comics, Batman was based in New York.
No,
but they decided,
I mean, in the films, like especially if
No.
ever. So I think that would
right.
be a cool thing that a lot of, because you always have these fans that don't read the comics. So you and me read the comics. We know that New York does exist in DC, but having that in a movie, I think that would be cool. That's something that a lot of fans haven't seen before. So that'd be a cool thing. Yeah.
And then, of course, you'd also get the other fans who said, well, hang on, Batman's in New York, where are the Avengers? And you and I will both go, ugh. But hey, you know, but yeah, all for it. The guy can act. He's got all the talent in the world. And the story possibilities, like you say, are endless. There's so much they could do with it. So, personally, give Winston Duke a chance. As long as he calms down that Batman voice, because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
What's something that isn't ridiculous, even though it's extremely different to the comic books, is the Crisis on Infinite Earths animated trilogy. I've watched and enjoyed the first two, and now Warner have announced that part 3 is coming out in a few short weeks in July. Now, have you seen the first two? What do you make of them? And are you excited for the end?
I've seen the first one. Now, I'm so glad that, you know, we've talked again and again about how great DC does with their animated movies, but I love that they have given this story its due by making it 3 parts instead of rushing it out as 1 or even 2. That in fact that it's 3 parts is really good. The thing that drew my eye most, of course, is the cover of the DVD with Superman holding Supergirl, like one of the most iconic covers of all time. So that makes me wonder what we're going to see.
Without doubt.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and quite frankly, and this is not just because this is a DC podcast, but these animated movies, DC can do no wrong. They have overall nailed it with their animated movies. So I don't think there's any reason to believe this would be any different. It's one of my favorite DC stories. It was one of the things that got me into DC as a kid. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Very cool.
Excited.
I mean, they've changed a bunch of the characters, but the heart and soul of the story they're telling and Earth's in Crisis is the same. But anyone seeing the films and then reading the comics will think, hang on, how is this even related? But the heart and soul of the story, and the fact Flash was the heavy focus of the first one, and he is kind of the guy that saves the day at the end of the cost of his own life. And like you said, the cover for part 3 and that iconic scene of Superman holding Kara's body. I remember being 15 years old reading those comics and thinking, what the actual hell? First Barry, now Kara. What is DC doing? So this will definitely have the same effect on film fans. So yeah, I'm a little bit bugged about the massive changes they've made, but when it comes to being entertaining animated films, like you said, they're killing it. It's a fact. I wouldn't have gone the exact same route they did, but hey, it works, and the films are extremely entertaining, fun to watch, well animated, and the voice cast is stellar. Yeah. I've got to say, Jensen Ackles is getting higher and higher on my list of favourite Batmen with every appearance he makes, and he's been a Bat fan for life. So
step into. So yeah, that's saying something, especially coming from somebody who is such a huge fan of the animated series as you are. That is saying something for sure. I
mean, there'll never be another Kevin Conroy, but Jensen Ackles is great, and I'd like to see him do a Batman movie where we hear his Bruce Wayne as well, because that'll be the ultimate test, to have 2 completely distinct voices, and no one's done that better than Conroy. If you didn't know, you'd actually think it was 2 actors playing both parts. So yeah, in that instance, you can't fault the direction, the production values, and the voice cast of these films, even if you're not that happy with the divergence in the storyline. So yeah, roll on July. Hopefully I'll get another preview copy on Blu-ray from Warner, and maybe even another streaming invite so we can talk about it live on Twitex or X-Twit or whatever they want to call it this week, again for number 3. So bring it on, Warner Brothers, bring it on. Now, a final news story from the movie world has had the internet go into meltdown. I complained that Superman's costume needed washing, but it's a very atmospheric, very clever picture, and it got people talking. We are, of course, talking about James Gunn releasing a copy of David Corenswet in full Superman costume. Your thoughts, oh icon of fashion?
I liked it, but what it always is interesting to me the little tweaks they make on an iconic costume, and but what I was trying to piece together is there's hints probably of the story in this picture. It looks like I think it's like a meteor coming down outside the window. It's like he's putting his costume on, in an apartment, not in a phone booth, things like that. So, it makes me wonder if I'm missing any other hints. But overall, I think the costume's fine. I was kind of surprised that there were more people complaining about it online. It seems like everybody just needs something to nitpick about. I always say that why would anybody want to be the U.S. president? And I would almost say that I love DC, but who would want to step into those shoes when
exactly
it seems like there's so many people that just want to tear DC down, but James Gunn comes in and takes the reins. So, kudos to him. But I overall, I like the costume, and I just want to know more about it. I'm just glad that the strike is over and we're moving along, and hopefully we'll see a trailer at some point down the road soon. I've got no complaints. I'm just glad that the gears are spinning again, because this has been kind of as far as superhero movies, it's been a very slow year because of the strike and everybody trying to retool what they're doing. But I think I said this before too, is that I think it's DC's game to lose at this point. Marvel has fallen a bit, and Marvel seems to not know how to put the pieces back together. They're trying everything, just throwing things against the wall, seeing what sticks. Now it's DC's time to pick up that baton, and I think that Superman could be the film to do it. So we'll see.
Well said, sir. I like your thinking. Now, being a comic book fan, as we are, I looked at this photo and tried to see it from a comic book artist's storytelling point of view. And like you said, we've got that big cosmic shenanigan happening outside, like some kind of cosmic storm or a meteor crash or alien invasion or something, bright coloured skies, lightning, whatever. And the fact that Superman is calmly pulling on his boots again is how I see it, because his suit is worn. It's dirty. He's literally just come back from saving the world, and he's got to go out again. But the look on his face is calm, implacable Superman. To me, I think this photograph is a work of pure genius, because it's showing the never-ending battle in one photo. It's showing that Superman, literally, it's never-ending. It doesn't stop, but that's his job, and that's what he's here for. And we should love him and respect him for that. And
we kind of know that it's not an origin story, because the suit is
which is great.
He does have that calm look, like, well, I got to do this again. It's not like this is my first
Absolutely.
time.
This is a Superman who's been around the block and possibly around the universe already, and that excites me greatly. So the fact they've conveyed all of that in one shot, and like you say, people love to complain. You and I have said it 1,000 times. The great thing about the internet is it gives everybody a voice. But the worst thing about the internet is it gives everyone a voice. The people who don't want to see Winston Duke as Batman. The people who say, James Gunn's ruining the DC universe, bring back Zack Snyder, this costume's awful, blah, 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 blah. Watch the film. If you don't like it, don't watch it again. But don't blow everything up before you've even seen it. Because look what you and I have taken out of one photo.
Yep.
So to me, the fact that he's physically picture perfect as Superman. In the last episode we recorded all those weeks ago, we said that the way he has physically transformed himself to become Superman is worthy of high praise. So sign me up. The fact is no longer Superman Legacy. It's just Superman. I'll be there. I'm seeing this one on the big screen and nothing's going to stop me.
Oh yeah.
So that's everything for the big screen. Now, obviously, as you say, with writer strikes and whatever else, there hasn't been a lot of great TV stuff happening in the world of comic books or DC, but we have had news that the last 3 members of Dream's family, the Endless, have been cast. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, 2 of those actors are very well known to me, and they're fantastic. We have a Destiny, we have a Delirium, and we're not going to name him for those people who haven't read the comics. We have the prodigal son who went missing. Brad, after myself, you are the biggest Sandman fan I know. What do you make of this fantastic news?
I don't know, and you can fill this in for me, because this actually kind of broke right before we started recording. I'm not familiar. You say you're familiar with 2 of these actors, and off the top of my head, I am not. So I'll be happy to hear that input. But I, as a Sandman fan and a fan of the series, that was one of the biggest things, of who they're going to get to play these. We want to see these characters, but also it's showing what stories we're going to get in this next season. We've already heard Season of Mist is going to be in there, and that's one of my favorite Sandman stories. And one of my favorite Sandman stories too is the story of Prodigal. And I want to see, and I was hoping that they would bring that in the season, because that's, when people discuss Sandman, that one's kind of left out a little bit. And I always thought that was really entertaining, and I always enjoy Delirium, partially because I'm a Tori Amos fan, and I would like to see how cool it'd be for her to make a cameo. I'm sure she would do it. I'm sure Neil would want her in it. Neil's got enough pull on the series, so it just makes me excited that we're going to get the season at some point sooner rather than later, maybe, or at least some kind of trailer, or whatever it may be, artwork. But also, it's exciting because I know what stories we're going to get in the season, and if they do as good a job as they did adapting what they did in the first season as they did in the second season, we are in for an absolute treat.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can't wait. Sandman is a huge part of my life. It's what you and I have always said is far more than a comic book or a graphic novel. It is literature with a capital L. And knowing Barry Sloane, who's going to play the Prodigal, knowing Adrian Lester, who's going to play Destiny, Netflix have done it again. These are 2 amazing character actors, stage and screen. Very few British movies or TV shows that are going strong, that have been around for years, haven't had appearances from one or both of these actors. They are stellar. They are absolutely stellar. Barry Sloane in particular has got all the physicality, but he can do dangerous and angry, but he can also do sensitive and funny, which, as we know, is the Prodigal all over. And as we've always said, that they portray their role, but also the opposite of their role. Obviously, I don't want to say who they are, what their role is, but when he finally appears on screen, people will get that. And I'm wondering whether they'll do it the way they did it in the comics, where you meet him out of the blue in the story of Orpheus's origin, or whether you'll only meet him when Dream and Delirium go to find him, and then they'll recap Orpheus's origin. So that's the thing I'd like to find out. But he's a stellar actor. He's fantastic. As for Adrian Lester, there's nothing this man can't do. And I cannot wait to see him as the quiet, all-knowing, all-seeing, although he is blind, Destiny. Because if anyone can portray this character, it's him. He's wonderful. The only actress I don't know is Esme Creed Miles, who's playing Delirium, but I just looked at her eyes and I can see that this is a face that it can make us smile, make us laugh, and make us think, okay, what's going on here? And the list of her credits is quite impressive, because I've heard of some of the projects she's worked on. So, yeah, as a Sandman fan, I am beyond excited about this casting. We now have all 7 members of the family, and bring it on. And like you said, to me, Season of Mist is probably the most underrated arc. particularly after reading Death at Death's Door and Joe Hill's fantastic Sandman Lock and Key crossover, Hell and Gone, because that expands, both of those stories expand on Season of Mist, and we'll talk about this in a moment, this story is where the Dead Boy Detectives made their debut. This is the story where in the comics we first met those characters. So we've seen, can we talk about this? I'm sure we can now because it's been a month since the final episode aired, but we've seen death and despair in Dead Boy Detectives. Does that mean we're going to see the Dead Boy Detectives in season 2 of Sandman? So excited about Sandman, but let's talk about Dead Boy Detectives because it's out, they're all done, and I loved every second. What about you?
I did too, and this was all about the characters. I loved all the characters, all of them. The villains, the heroes. Loved Nico, loved Jenny. It was great. It was great. Kind of better than I was expecting, and of course that first episode when Death showed up, I think my jaw hit the floor. I was like, yes, they're leaning into the crossover, and the Despair cameo was really, really good as well. That could have been one of my favorite moments of the show, but it was so well done, so character driven, and it. I always think that you have Lovecraftian horror, and I think that with Neil Gaiman, he, like Lovecraft, created his own subgenre, and it felt very Gaiman-esque, the series, and I'm glad they did that. He doesn't have as much pull as he does on Sandman, but man, it was better. It was better than I was expecting it to be, really, and I'm really glad that they did include those cameos. I was thrilled. I remember thinking, oh, I wonder what's. And I got busy and I never ended up asking you, but I was wondering what Steve thinks of those cameos in those episodes. But yeah, overall it was just a great series. And I don't know if they've released whether they're going to do a season 2 yet, but I really hope
they have confirmed there's going to be a season 2. It has been confirmed, yeah.
Right. And I say, then why not bring them in? That would be a perfect way to bring them into Sandman, because like you said, that's where the characters were introduced. So yeah, absolutely. I would love to see that.
Absolutely. 100%. Again, we are entirely of one mind. Because I went in expecting to like it just because I love this universe and I love these characters so much. But I didn't expect to be blown away and love it. The fact that my wife, who again loves Sandman but little else about comics, sat and watched every episode with me and loved it, is a huge testament to how good that show is. Because she will not just watch anything, and there's stuff she started watching with me and thought, no, I can't handle this, and she's gone to do something else. But we sat and watched every episode of Dead Boy Detectives. Like you said, as soon as Death showed up, I thought, okay,
that was
great.
Very smart to do it into the first episode too, I think, because
brilliant. And the fact that we also see now a difference, even if it's from outside a window or a shadow or a cut flash of light, the difference of where the people will go depending on how they've lived their lives was fantastic. And the shadow of her wings, and the fact that she's still the lovable, amazing Death that you and I fell for decades ago is just a joy. But like you say, the Despair cameo probably blew me away even more for several reasons. A, she wasn't used very well in Sandman season 1, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And this piece of acting, the use of the hook, her voice, her expression at seeing the souls in despair in her mirror dimension was comic book perfect. Her mirror dimension was comic book perfect. And she was probably the last character I expected to see in Dead Boy Detectives. But she was used to perfection. It was fantastic. And then, like you say, every actor was brilliant. Every cast member was brilliant. The villains, the side characters, everything else was fantastic. And when you get obscure DC characters like the Cat King and others as well making an appearance,
was a lot of fun.
So good. And sometimes, I mean, you and I have said it as well, that the CW shows were guilty of having very, very beautiful cast members who weren't always the greatest of actors. This series has very, very beautiful cast members who can act their socks off. And that made me really happy. I mean, from start to finish, I thought it was great. I'm overjoyed that a season 2 is happening. And if there is more crossovers with the main Sandman show, colour me happy. This is one fan who's in his element. And as a Sandman fan, you and I probably both are, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, there was never a moment where I didn't feel like I was watching something that was worthy of being associated with Sandman. Because to me, that's a high bar. To be part of Sandman.
Yeah.
That takes a lot.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was definitely worthy. Because like you said, Sandman is has such an impact on my life. It's so important to me that, I can't. Yeah, I take it seriously, and it has to be done well. And I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I mean, Sandman, in my opinion, is one of those seminal comic book works like Mouse or Watchmen or Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, as the ones that changed the game. And to see it treated with respect and love by people who are obviously fans, it makes my day. And even seeing nods and tips and returning characters from shows like Doom Patrol, the Night Nurse is a Doom Patrol character played by the same actress. It just makes me happy. So bring it on. So that's it. That's all the live action movie and TV news. But Brad, take it away and take us to where it all comes from.
Yes, we've got some comic news. So first up, looks like we have, this should be no surprise to people who've been reading these series, but Nightwing and World's Finest have led in some Eisner nominations. So I think they're both very deserving. What about you?
We talk about this almost weekly. Are there two better superhero books, pure superhero books on the shelves than Mark Waid and Dan Mora's World's Finest and Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo's Nightwing? Personally, I think not. Though I also think that most of DC's output at the moment is absolutely stellar. But the way World's Finest is getting those ridiculous Silver Age characters and settings, but placing them in the modern, almost modern day, when Superman and Batman and Robin were first starting out, but with the great modern dialogue, the twist in humor, the darkness of today, it's just beautiful. And what can I say about Dan Mora's art? The guy is arguably the next Jose Luis Garcia Lopez or George Perez. He's just one of those sublime comic book artists. He's not an Alex Ross painter, but he's one of those guys who draws comic books better than just about anyone else. And then you get Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo on Nightwing. Tom Taylor, who seems to just love Dick Grayson and everything about him. And Bruno Redondo, who brings a designer sensibility and a fashion designer sensibility to the book. And the way they've created a comic book, which is a 20-page book, which is one panel, and another issue where everything the reader sees is what Nightwing sees. Creativity like that just elevates the whole medium. And why the hell hasn't it ever been done before? It's just genius storytelling. And for the fact that these two books have had 3 nominations each this year, the fact that Nightwing over the last few years have now had 11 Eisner nominations should surely show the world how great these books are. And seriously, guys, if you're not reading these 2 titles, you are missing out, particularly as issue 114 of Nightwing, which just came out a couple of weeks ago, is the first of the final 5 issues by the current creative team. So if you haven't been buying it, pick up the trades, pick up the graphic novel collections, because this is And this is coming from someone who's never missed an issue of Nightwing since his first miniseries back in the 90s. This could be the best Nightwing run of all time. Amazing. I actually love most of the Eisner nominations this year. And the fact that DC and their sister company Image have led the way with the nominations proves what we've been saying all along, that while Marvel may just still have a hold on live action and movies, when it comes to comic books, our friends at DC are leagues ahead. I mean, your thoughts?
Yeah. I don't, usually when you have experimental art, whether it's experimental music, film, whatever, that is cool and all, but it takes away from narrative and story, whatever it may be. What is brilliant about Nightwing to me is that it does that. It's experimental, but the story is still so solid and still so emotional, and it's the heart of everything. And that's, to me, what makes this book so brilliant. That not only, because that's what's going to draw me in above anything, is a good story. But you can do that story and still have fun with the medium itself. I mean, that's amazing. It does remind me a bit of some Chris Ware stuff a little bit, which I think is really cool. Yeah, and Mark Waid, you can't go wrong with Mark Waid. I mean, what a way to come back to writing comics. He was ready and waiting, and boy, did he deliver. So, yeah, I do think that, back to Nightwing for a minute, I think that will go down as not only the best Nightwing run, but one of the best superhero runs ever. They might be a competitor, whatever, but it's up there with modern, like 20th century or 21st century superhero runs as Jason Aaron's run on Thor. I think Nightwing and Thor are the two best superhero runs of the 21st century.
Absolutely. 100% agreed.
And this Nightwing, I almost can't wait until they come out with the omnibus editions to have it all, not just in the trades, but in big.
That's going to have to be at least 2.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was thinking the same thing. That can't just be 1, but it might have to be 2. But man, that would be something to put on your shelf. I mean, it'll go down. It'll go down as one of the best. I think it's going to be a long time before anything comes around that is as good as that Nightwing was. Sure, so definitely a classic.
And you and I are in a privileged position that we get all these books for free to review. But with anything that I love, and comic books are probably the thing that I love, the medium that I love more than any other, when they're as good as this, I will still physically buy the comics and the trades or the hardbacks or whatever to support the medium and to support the creators. And Nightwing and World's Finest are no different. I mean, Mark Waid gave us Kingdom Come, for goodness sake, which again is up there with Watchmen as one of the single greatest pieces of graphic literature you can get under 2 covers. And it's brilliant to see them recognized this way. Brilliant.
Yeah, I don't see anything beating either of them, really.
I just hope Tom Taylor finally gets a Best Writer award. That's the only thing that's been missing for the Nightwing awards. Redondo's had it, the series has had it, Best Issue, Best Arc, whatever. But I want to see Tom Taylor get an Eisner Award.
Yep, and up next is something that has just hit, that Jeff Loeb has announced a follow-up to Long Halloween. Long Halloween is one of the best Batman stories if you want to introduce somebody to the character. I don't think there exists a better... Year 1, Dark Knight Returns, you still have to... It benefits to have more knowledge of the character, but this is such a great introduction. One of the best and one of the most classic Batman stories of all time is getting a sequel. What do you think of this?
Well, as Dark Knight News seems to have been the first website to actually announce this, because obviously it was announced at the MCM Comic Con in London, where my wonderful offspring and co-host of the I Am the Night podcast is there again today. it just makes me very happy because obviously I've met and interviewed Tim Sale before his passing. I've met and interviewed Richard Starkings, who's lettered every Long Halloween book and series. And both Tim and Richard said that there was more Long Halloween to tell. I mean, even after the 2021 special, Richard Starkings said there should be a last Halloween, but with Tim gone. And I don't know if you're aware that Richard Starkings and Tim Sales were like best friends. They were like you and I. They were like really super close. But we discussed this. Surely something can be done. I mean, you and I saw with the Batman Catwoman when John Paul Leon died that they did a tribute issue, published it anyway with the pages he'd done and other artists finishing off the story. And the fact that's kind of what they've done, though poor Tim didn't actually draw any of it apart from the first issue because they're representing the 2021 special as issue 0 of the last Halloween. But they are using brand new, never published Tim Sale art on all the main covers with variant covers featuring the story artists. And that to me is, what's a better tribute than that? To give fans art they've never seen before by Tim Sale, who to me, again, is one of the greatest storytellers in the history of the medium. So the fact we are getting the last Halloween, just that news alone, sign me up, I'm there. The fact that we're also getting Dave Stewart, one of the premier comic book color artists, coloring it. And we're getting the original writer, Jeff Loeb, and we're getting the original letterer, Richard Starkings, who worked on every single Long Halloween, coming back to finish the story. Apart from the spirit of Tim Sale coming back down to earth, there could be no better news for me. And the fact that we were there and broke this news, dude, I'm supposed to be giving up physical monthly comics and just waiting for the trades. But I've got every issue of the Long Halloween. I've got every issue of Dark Victory. I've got every issue, the 3 Haunted Night specials that came before the Long Halloween. I've got all of Catwoman Run in Rome. I've got the special. I'm getting these 10, 11 issues. I don't care. My wife may murder me, but hey, I'll die happy. But Brad, you must have an opinion on this.
Yes, I am very excited about it. I love that they are using some never seen Tim Sale art. I do think his presence will be missed. It's great. I don't want to take away from any of the artists involved, but it's one of those, that was such a team up that felt so right and so perfect. They really fed off each other. I always go back to the Garth Ennis, Steve Dillon on Preacher. It was one of those things that you wouldn't have Preacher without Steve Dillon. And it's going to be hard to have a Long Halloween without Tim Sale. But these artists are great. It's going to be, so I'm super psyched because I think that they are really going to step up to the plate. I'm excited. This could be one of the bigger comics of the entire year when it does come out. I think people are going to be excited for it.
No doubt.
Yeah, because like I said, Long Halloween is one of those stories. Like if you put up the iconic Batman stories, it's up there with Year One and Dark Knight Returns. I think those are like the big 3 when it comes to Batman stories. So I'm excited. And I, like you, I've really stepped away from monthly comics. They're hard to store. You just get a tiny piece of the story. I like the experience of reading a trade. But this is one of those things. It's very rare that, especially a whole series, like I might pick up a first issue here and there, but this might be one that I have to pick up the full series for because I just think it's going to be so well done. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward.
If they do the glossy card covers that they used with the original series, then they're going to be much easier to protect and look after. And it's only 10 issues plus issue 0. Yeah. So try stopping me. I think I need to, 'cause that way I've got the whole set.
Yeah.
I mean, because you know what collectors are like.
Yeah.
But the fact that DC have actually published, and you'll see it in my article on Dark Knight News, the covers, the variant covers for issue 2 and 3 by Klaus Janson and Eduardo Risso, and they are Mark Curillo. I do beg your pardon, and they are so amazing. And to have Mark Curillo back, at DC, who's one of the finest art directors the company has ever had. I mean, this is the guy who gave us Wednesday Comics. Yeah. And again, a huge friend of Tim Sale and Richard Starkings. Like I said, apart from having Tim back, the creative talents they picked, I mean, Eduardo Risso, you probably remember him from 100 Bullets, and he drew the incredible Broken City arc directly after Hush. Another stark black and white high contrast artist. I think he's going to be amazing. So, bring it on. I'm so happy.
Yeah. And we also got some reveals of the swimsuit variant covers this year. They are a lot of fun. What'd you think of these?
Dude, to all those people who, like we say, probably never read a comic book in their lives, who say, DC are too dark, DC are this, DC are that. This story and the next story should really open your eyes and show you how much fun they are. The fact we're getting covers to all the main DC books featuring the heroes in the sun, splashing about, having fun in their swimsuits shows, hey, if this isn't fun, what is? They're great. The Titans one is my favourite because obviously they are the #1 premier super team in DC right now. But the use of colour and light in all of them, the use of humour in all of them, the S symbol shining through some palm trees on Clark's chest, they're great. They're fun, and they may be the covers that most people actually pick up instead of the main in the summer because they're brilliant. They're not okay. All variant covers are gimmicks. Yes, they are. But when they're this good, who cares? That's what I think. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. And there was something, I really like the style. Some of these look like watercolors, and it seems like almost like there's a theme running through them as far as how they were put together, how they were created. I grew up in Ohio, so we had SeaWorld, and SeaWorld always had the water ski show. And that's why I think the Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman pyramid on the water skis is one of my favorites, because I was like, they should have done that
so good
at SeaWorld, had people dressed up. They may have done that one summer for the ski show, but that is just good. They're playful. They're not tawdry. They're fun. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that more people are going to pick up the swimsuit covers than the regular covers. Speaking of covers, now these covers that we're talking about now are references to the Superpowers toy line, and I always love the action figure covers, so I'm super thrilled about these. What about you?
I mean, any kid who was a comic book fan that grew up in the 70s and the 80s, the Mego figures and toys and the Superpowers figures and toys ruled your entire life. And the fact that, and we always say this, McFarlane Toys have taken the baton and have not just reproduced the classic Superpowers figures, but are releasing brand new ones, including a 3-pack exclusive to Amazon that's linked to these comic book covers. Shows that the Superpowers range hasn't just stolen the hearts of our generation, but people today want them too. And these covers, and again, Nightwing's my favorite because Nightwing, and Disco Nightwing even more so. These covers, and the fact it's not just the front cover, it's the back as well, to portray the packaging of each action figure exactly the way you bought them in the stores. It's genius. It's absolute genius. The bright blue, the red and yellow of the logo, it grabs your eyes. And I'm telling you, and you and I love this, the kids who may just buy action figures will want these comics. And as soon as you get that happening and the kids start reading the books, everybody wins. This is genius on the part of DC and McFarlane Toys. Dude, I can't afford to buy action figures. I've got no room to keep them. But damn it, I can get some Superpowers variant covered comic books and love them for the rest of my life. Brad, you are the man with the eye. Tell me this hasn't blown you away.
Well, it blew me away because I was just too young to get into the Mego toys. Those were already kind of done by the time I got into them. But Superpowers were there at the beginning for me. And I still, when I think of like iconic looks of the characters, I go to what they look like as the Superpower toys, the gray Batman, etc. And that's what I love about the versions they used, like the Disco Nightwing. That would have been the Nightwing they would have had out back in those days. That would have been the costume. Same way with the Poison Ivy. That's how the Poison Ivy would have looked if it came out back when the original Superpowers toys were released. I hope that the demand for these is so big that they end up making them, because I can guarantee you that if they made a Nightwing Superpowers toy,
they'd sell like hotcakes. Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely, they would. So I hope that gets McFarlane into making these actually as toys. And I'd love that, like you said, the back cover is the back card. When Marvel did the Star Wars action figure covers, and I think they did it in other titles too.
They did it for Secret Wars, the second Secret Wars in a few years ago as well.
Yeah. So that's when I was still getting the monthly comics, those would always be the covers that I would pick, because it reminded me of going into a toy store as a kid. So those were the covers that I would go to. So I love these covers, and I love that these were the versions of the characters and not more modern versions. So I love it. I love it. And also, as a side note into the story, just to mention too, is that McFarlane is releasing a special Amazon 3-pack of Superpower with a Black Batman, and a Bat Helicopter, and the Batwing.
Very cool.
All set up kind of like the Batman '89. So that kind of goes over into the other stories, but that is something also to look forward to if you're a Superpowers fan on Amazon. So keep your eye open for that. Speaking of other news, that does wrap up the comic news, but we do have another story in the video game world. Multiverse Rifts is coming back with a new mode where it's not just PvP, which is something that I'm excited for. What about you?
Yeah, this sounds fascinating. So these rifts are like side missions or extra stories where you play as this one character and you get to see who they are and learn about how they move, how they work, how they interact with other characters in like completely solo that character moves. I think that's brilliant, because the one thing with video games that when I played them when I was a younger person was learning all the moves and how to best use the character, and then that giving you your favorite character to use. I mean, I've usually played fighting games, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, that kind of thing. And the hardest part was learning everything your character could do. So these rifts sound ideal. I mean, obviously, I'm not a gamer anymore. I don't know. But the fact that they're doing that, and the fact that they're relaunching this game with such care, love, and hype, and the characters they've introduced, and the trailer for the game has blown me away. It's the best of Warner Brothers, which is some of the finest characters in all of fiction, if we're honest. Not just the DC characters, but all the Warner cartoons and everything else. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. And as a gamer, this probably means a lot more to you than to me. I mean, what do you make of it?
Well, it means a lot to me, not only as a gamer, but I prefer very much single-player games over multiplayer. And that's what this is. This is a kind of a single-player version, and maybe even more of a storyline. When I do play these fighting games like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, I don't go into playing other players. I go into the story modes, and the other mode I go to, sometimes if I'm stuck, I'll go into the practice mode where you can learn the character's moves. And that's what's cool about this is kind of both of those wrapped into one. But anytime any game that was multiplayer ends up having a single player version or a single player campaign, I'm all for it. So I think this was a good idea, and I like it too, because games these days have veered more and more into the multiplayer experience rather than the single player. And I like something that kind of goes the other direction and brings it to a single player world. So yeah, I'm excited about this as well. Especially me, as the kind of games that I like to play, this is more perfect for me. So yeah, and that will wrap up another fine episode of the DC Comics News podcast. Yeah, so Steve, any other stories that you want to share, books you're reading before we sign off?
The wonderful Penguin Random House recently sent me the hardcover collected edition of James Tynan's Nightmare Country, The Glass House. And again, it's gorgeous. The book itself is absolutely beautiful, beautifully made, beautifully printed, great paper, great binding, great dust jacket. It didn't have a free print by Jenny Frison this time, but it did have an extra chapter in the Thessaly issue. So it's 7 issues rather than 6 in those covers. And again, Sandman Universe, when you get someone of James Tynan's caliber writing in the Sandman Universe, and having met and interviewed James for DC Comics News, knowing that that was probably the book that was most instrumental in making him a writer in the first place, you can feel his love for this universe in every line of dialogue, and in the fact that with the final cover of Glass House showing despair and desire wriggling their hands in the air like puppeteers, and the cast of characters underneath as if they're being the puppets, you just know that the final third volume is going to lead Dream and Death into direct conflict with those siblings, as it has been since the beginning of time, as any Sandman fan will know. So he's saving the best for last, but as a middle chapter goes, if you've never read the Nightmare Country series 1 and 2, Nightmare Country, The Glass House, pick them up. You will not be disappointed if you're a Sandman fan. And the fact that Glass House contains the most quirky, original, different, heartwarming, yet ultimately disturbing love story I've ever seen on a comic book page, that should be enough to get you going. So that's mainly what I've been reading, but I've also been picking up a lot of old stuff, and I am about to do my annual reread of Watchmen. I think I've decided to read all of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing and the complete Neil Gaiman Sandman as well by the summer, because I still don't know if I'm going to be well enough to have a full summer vacation this year. So I've got lots of home time ahead of me maybe, but hey, I've got 15,000 comics I can lean on. So that should keep me happy and smiling. What about yourself, my brother?
I've also been reading The Glass House and absolutely loved it. And if anybody can pick up the Sandman universe and run with it, it's James Tynion. So I love that he's involved. I loved it was good. And another book is Batman Fortress that I enjoyed. I really liked the art. It was just a fun, fast-paced Batman story. I loved him arguing with the Guardians of the Universe. It was just that I found it a lot of fun. So in the DC world, those are two things that I've read recently that I've really enjoyed. So yeah, you just, as we always say, it's a great time to be a DC fan, and it's books like this that are the reason why. So
there's something for everybody. Oh, I need to mention, especially to yourself, in June, they are reissuing the 2 children's books by Jill Thompson, the 2 Little Endless children's books, in a slipcase. And they've announced that they are re-releasing a new version, 2024 version of Death at Death's Door this year as well. So fingers crossed they'll do the Dead Boy Detectives as well. So anyone who missed those first time around can complete their Silent Sandman library. And Jill Thompson's work is beautiful. And the fact that At Death's Door is almost 40% Neil Gaiman's Season of Mists as well is a must-have for any Sandman fan. So look out for those over the next few months too.
Yep. All right. So that wraps it up. Now, Steve, where can people find you if they want to look you up online?
Of course, they haven't heard us for a while, either on this show or on I Am the Night, but now that our server issues have been resolved, expect that to change. Brad and I, and hopefully other members of the DC Comics News podcast team, will be back hopefully on a weekly basis, so listen out for that. Adam and I are recording the final 4 episodes of I Am the Night in the next few weeks. The last episode of the show proper, the world's finest Superman Batman movie, Sub-Zero, and Mystery of the Batwoman, and maybe we might get someone called Brad involved in an episode or 2 as well. And then Adam needs to save their pennies to get the Batman Beyond box set, because we've been listening to our listeners and viewers. We've been reading every single DM, and they've decided that not to go for the comics because a lot of them are hard to find. There are probably 150 odd to pick up, and that won't be easy. So we have decided to take a brief hiatus after the final 4 episodes and get started on recording Batman Beyond the Night, our new podcast.
Nice. Oh, that's a great title. Yeah.
2024. So that's where you'll hear us. To read my work, type Steve J. Ray into Google for my articles, news and reviews across DC Comics News, Dark Knight News, and my own website, Run with Adam, Fantastic Universes. Brad, where can the multiverse find your missives?
You can find me writing news reviews on DCComicsNews.com, occasionally writing reviews on Josh's sister site, Mark with the Movie Blog. You can find me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at FlickyB1. I don't tweet often because I have issues with the platform, but if you want, you can hit me up there. So yeah, and with that, you can find DC Comics News on all socials at DCCOMICS.com. So look us up, and until next week, do something that everybody should be doing, and that is to
read more comics. We love them.
Until next week, everyone.